Now, imposter syndrome is actually about who we are. So imposter syndrome goes a little bit deeper than that, a little bit deeper than self-doubt about the fact that, oh, maybe we won't be able to do that task, or maybe we won't be able to show up to networking with our big pants on. But actually, this is more about who I am. Who am I? Who am I to say that? Who am I to sit here and talk to you all about imposter syndrome? So we know we can build our confidence through taking action, through positive self-belief. We've got confidence cousins like self-esteem and those kind of things. But with imposter syndrome, it's harder to talk your way out of it. And positive affirmations, for example, will just be a sticking plaster over imposter syndrome because it runs much deeper. So here's some research that's taken place over the years. Started in 1978 with 2 US psychologists, and they described it as a phenomenon. I find that really hard to say that without going phenomenon. And they said that it's an internal experience of intellectual phoniness that those who feel fraudulence and worthlessness have in spite of outstanding academic or professional accomplishment. Then moving on in 1985, 2 more professors again called it imposter phenomenon, Harvey and Katz, and they said it's a psychological pattern rooted in intense, concealed feeling of fraudulence when faced with the achievement of tasks. And then finally, if you haven't heard of Claire Yoser, she's a really great NLP practitioner coach, worked in the corporate world for a long time and now has her own business. And in 2019, she did quite a lot of research on imposter syndrome with corporate clients, students, and business owners. And her definition is that imposter syndrome happens when there's a mismatch between who you see yourself as currently being and who you think you need to be to achieve or create a goal, despite the evidence that you're more than capable. So things that you'll hear then if you are running imposter syndrome. So it's a lot of self-talk and it's about who we are, not what we're doing. So you're likely to hear some of the following. So who am I to do that? What if they find me out? What if they realise I'm a fraud? What if they spot that I don't belong here? So when we have self-doubt or we lack confidence, actually we're more likely to hear, well, what if it goes wrong? We're more likely to hear the what ifs because it's related more to the task than about who we are. Now, those who are likely to struggle with imposter syndrome might look completely successful on the outside, but actually, if any of you have, I can't see all of you, so I can't see if anybody's nodding or anything, but if any of you have been running some imposter syndrome scripts or you've suffered with it in the past, I'm feeling for you at 3 a.m. in the morning when you're waking up and you're worried about being found out. So lots of you will have seen some kind of iceberg diagram before, I'm sure, about what happens on the surface and then what happens underneath. But this one relates, and this is from the Claire Yoser book called Ditching Imposter Syndrome. And she talks about where imposter syndrome is really deep rooted. And she says that our actions are above the surface, so they're the things that we see. Our self-talk is generally a behavior that we can change. You know, we might say to ourselves, come on, Gayle, you know, you can do this. Come on, Gayle, pull up your big pants and, you know, you can get through this. And our behaviors are driven by our thoughts. And if you change your thoughts, you know, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're usually right. So our beliefs then are a bit more difficult to filter out because they're what we believe. And most often we'll look for evidence to confirm that, whether it's right or wrong. And we'll go out to look for that, whether it's true or false, I should say. Some of these beliefs are conscious, but most of them are deep rooted. They're unconscious. So for example, if you're communicating a message about, you know, meeting people is really important to me, but actually you're running a belief that, do you know what, I'm not really very good at networking, then you're just adding flames to the fire. So then next down are our values, and these are usually really deeply unconscious, and they're concepts that we pick up through life. They add emotions to our beliefs because they're much more potent, if you like. And values is often why training sessions don't work. if you think back to, I'm sure most of you in the corporate world were asked to attend training sessions around values and, you know, corporate strategy and things like that. And often you might have walked away thinking, oh, well, actually, do you know what, I'm just going to go with this, but I don't really believe in it. And that's because there was a disconnect between your values and the values that you were being asked to deliver or believe in. And then right at the very bottom of this iceberg is this identity belief. So when a belief and a value get tied together and they're in conflict, this inner dialogue starts with, well, who am I to do that? What kind of person does that make me if I can't do that? And then it becomes really hard to get to the top of that iceberg. So the 4 Ps of imposter syndrome, and I'm sure some of you will recognize these, whether it's imposter syndrome related or it's confidence related. And they are procrastination, perfectionism, paralysis, and people pleasing. And really quickly, procrastination for those who are running imposter syndrome is about not completing projects, because if you don't finish it, it can't go out there in the public eye or to your network. And actually then you can't be found out as a fake. Perfectionism is a key trigger for imposter syndrome, because what it sees you doing is it sees you raising your internal standards to impossibly high in an effort so that you're not found out as lacking. You can become terrified of making mistakes. And when things go right, you go, oh, well, it was a fluke. And actually in the self-employed world, Claire Yoser suggests that this is about when we sign up for courses and we go, well, when I'm qualified in that, that's okay. I can then go out to my network and I can say I can do this, or I'm capable of it. Paralysis then stops us from speaking our mind. It gets us turning down opportunities again because we don't feel like we've got the permission to talk about that, or we're not good enough to do that. And that fear of being found out actually paralyzes you from doing anything. And then finally, the people pleasing one, all about, it's a bit of a stress response, I guess. And in this, the person fawns, if you like. So they fawn over themselves in favor to be won, to be liked. And what happens is this leads to quite poor boundaries, particularly in the self-employed world, where you start to get a feeling of you're being taken advantage of. And 57% apparently of entrepreneurs in the research said that their behaviours fall under overgiving and not then valuing their services. So ways to manage it then, there are lots of different ways depending on what you're running, but the 3 main ways would be to manage your inner critic. And I talked about, mine's called Betty, but this is no normal Betty. Betty sits on my shoulder and kind of does the what if. But in the imposter syndrome world, Betty wants you to survive. So her survival instinct becomes really, really strong. And a great way to manage it is ABC. So accept it. As soon as you hear it, don't fight it, accept it. That removes its power. Breathe, take some deep breaths. Slow down your breathing, slow down your heart rate. Simplest way to reset. And then choose to consciously think a thought that's going to make you instantly feel better, whatever that might be. And somebody said earlier, I'm really sorry, I can't remember who it was, but let's smile and have a laugh. And actually it does make you, laugh. I'm from Lincolnshire, so my Lincolnshire accent comes out every now and then in different things, but have a laugh, because that's what makes you feel really good. I'd be really aware of words like if, but, just, and try. Now these words, they're internal talk that almost give you a pass out. So I'm just going to try to do so. I'm just going to try to go to the gym. I know we can't at the moment, but I'm just going to try and go out for a run. That word try just gives you a pass out. It's, well, I'm going to try, but if it doesn't happen, then it's okay. The next thing she talked about was these limiting beliefs. And she said that these are all wrapped up in fear of something. So limiting beliefs, fear of failure, fear of success. Actually, we don't want to be seen as being successful because, again, what if we get found out? Fear of criticism by others, fear of rejection, fear of lack of money is obviously a big thing at the moment. And it's really hard to get rid of those limiting beliefs because, again, you're dealing with emotion that's attached to those limiting beliefs and about how people feel. And then finally, she also talks about taking off your mask. And we don't mean the COVID mask that we're all having to wear. We're meaning the masks that you pick up through life. Those identities that you're given maybe by a corporate employer. I remember always being, when I was in retail as a store manager, I was always Gayle from Chichester. I was always attached to something. That business gave me that identity. And when I started to run my own business, I was able to take that mask off and actually become Gayle. And I'm not just Gayle, but I am Gayle. So in really quick summary, really conscious of time. So in summary then, imposter syndrome is about who we are and not what we do. We might run imposter syndrome for some things and not for other things. So we might be really confident in one area, but we might be really doubting who we are in another. The research is extensive. I mean, you know, we could talk about this all day. The 4 Ps of imposter syndrome run across confidence and across imposter syndrome. And I think there might be one that's more prevalent for you than the other. It can be managed, but in some cases it needs professional help. And because here we're dealing with emotions, sometimes I'm going to be a bit bold here and say, actually, coaching can't always help imposter syndrome because it's really deep rooted. It might be counselling might be better for you because you need to go back and unpick some of those things that happened that caused you to have this identity level imposter syndrome, rather than coaching, which is all about moving forward. And finally, that it's bigger than positive self-talk and positive affirmations. So a really great book, if you're really interested in imposter syndrome, is this Claire Yoser, Ditching Imposter Syndrome. You get it on Amazon, about a tenner, I think. And when you get it, you get access to what she calls her vault. And in the vault are lots of activities and, you know, resources that you can use to help you manage imposter syndrome. Look at that, 12, 13 minutes, Penny. So thank you. If you've got any questions, I'm happy